a previous video series, I showed you how to set up a web server from scratch. And now in this video, we're going to add an FTP user and create custom keys, a private and public key, so that that user can connect via an FTP client. So I'm logged in here on AWS, and the first thing I'm going to do is find Lightsail. I'm just going to type in Lightsail. And here we are. So this is the instance that I created previously. In order to log in, I need to log in with EC2 user, which was created automatically when I created this instance. So I'm actually going to go ahead and do that for now. And as I said before, I've shown you how to do this previously in a previous video. So I'm going to log in with EC2 user, and I'm successfully logged in. Now, if I change directory and go to my data directory, I'm just going to list that. You'll see there I've got my folder there, darkpixel.tech. I'm going to change to that directory as well. I'm just going to show you the permissions that I've currently got. So I've given permissions to the Apache user. So I actually want to have FTP access to this whole folder. So how am I going to do that? First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a user for this server. So I'm going to go sudo add user, and I'm just going to call it FTP user. I've created that account. I'm actually going to add that user to the Apache group. So you'll see here I've got an Apache user and an Apache group. There's more than one way that you can actually design this. You want to design it with the maximum security in mind. We don't want to log in with the Apache user, so that's why I've actually created a new user, because we don't necessarily want to give FTP user all of the permissions that Apache has. You could actually create a new group to do this and add Apache to a different group. So there's more than one way to design this. But for now, I'm just going to add FTP user to that Apache group. So I'm going to modify that by going sudo user mod, and I need a couple of switches here. So that's the group that I'm adding my user to, and then I'm going to add FTP user to that group. So that user has now been added to the Apache group. Now, if you're not sure how groups and users work, I'm assuming that in order to have a secure web server, that you at least understand some of the fundamentals of users and groups. So now we're going to take a look at creating your keys in Lightsail. So here I am in Lightsail, and I need to go up to my account name up the top here, click the arrow, and you'll see that the top option here is account. I'm going to click on that, and this is where we get the options to create our keys. So we're going to go to SSH keys. So you'll see here there's a default key that's already been created when I created the instance. So that is being used by Lightsail right now and EC2 user. Now, if I actually go to instances, you can have a look here, and you'll see that I've got here download default key. So that's what we're referring to. So I'm just going to pop back into those account details there, SSH key. So now I'm going to create a custom key pair for FTP user. So this is a really good way of segregating permissions in an organization. You don't want everyone sharing the same key, because if someone actually leaves the organization, then you've got a security issue. That person still has access to that key. If you give them their own key, when they leave, you can actually then delete that key, and then you keep your servers secure. I'm going to create my custom keys. I'm just going to name this FTP user keys. So I've generated the key pair. Now you must download this straight away. You've only got one chance to actually download this. So I'm going to click download private key, and I'm now going to save my key there. All right, so I've got it. I've got my keys. Okay, now I went through previously on how to create a private key, but now we're going to be creating a public key as well to use for FTP user. For EC2 user, the public key had already been created, but now we're going to have to do this manually. This is where we're going to use PuttyGen. We need to load that key that I've just downloaded. So you'll browse to the folder where that key is. I'm actually going to change that to all files, and I'm going to select that key that I just downloaded, that PEM file, and I'll open it up. So it's imported the PEM key, and now I need to save a public key and save a private key. Now, do not share the private key. The public key is what's going to go on the server. So if it gets hacked, anyone can get the public key. They can't do anything with it. But the private key you must keep secure. So I'm going to save a public key first, and I'm going to pop it in that folder. So I'm going to go FTP user. I'm going to call that public key. Okay, and I've also got it here. So I could actually just copy that text for when we go back to our Linux instance. Now I'm going to save the private key. So I'm going to call that FTP user private key. Okay, I've got my 2 keys, so I might just keep that there for my copy and paste. And now I'm going to pop back over to my instance. Because I haven't actually logged in with that user, I haven't done anything, it's a brand new user, I'm going to navigate to the home directory for FTP user. So I'm going to go CD, home, and if I do a list, and you'll see there, I've now got that new FTP user. So I'm going to move into that home directory for FTP user. Oh, and now because I'm not actually logged in with FTP user, it's actually telling me, no, you can't access it. So I'm going to have to raise my credentials here to be able to access it. So I'm going to go sudo su. I made myself a super user now. And let's just have a look. I'm going to go cd FTP user. And let's have a look in here. Now, there's nothing in that folder, but we're going to be creating a hidden folder. So I'm just going to have a look at the hidden folders, and there's not much in there. The hidden folder I'm going to create is makedir, and I'm going to call it .ssh. Now I need to create a file called authorized keys. So I'm going to go sudo nano authorized keys. Now I'm from Australia. I want to type an S, and it has to be a Z no matter where you're from. Now I'm just going to copy and paste that key into the text here. So I'm going to right click. Now it looks like it hasn't all copied, but that's because it's all one big long line. Now if I actually copied it from the file that I'd saved, I would actually have to format it and remove those lines. So this pastes straight in there. So that's perfectly fine for me. I'm now going to save this. So I'm going to press Control O, save that file and exit. So that public key is now active for me. So the next thing I need to do is look at the settings within my web files to make sure that that FTP user can now write to those files. So I'm going to change directory back to my data folder. And I'm just going to check my permissions on there. So if you're not sure how permissions work, the first 3 that I've highlighted here, we've got read, write, and execute. Those are permissions for the user. So in this case, the Apache user has full read, write, and execute access on that directory. The next 3 is for the group. So the Apache group, which I added FTP user to, it only has read and execute access. And lastly, this is other, so anyone else. Now the problem we've got here is that if we leave it like this, when FTP user logs in, it'll be able to connect and see the files through FTP, but it won't actually be able to copy files in there. However, Apache actually has access to write files. Now, sometimes that is necessary. So say with WordPress, it may need to write some files. So you have to make a decision here about whether you want Apache to continue to have write access. Let's assume that Apache is not going to have write access. So I'm going to change the permissions now so that FTP user will be the owner of these files. So the Apache group will still be on this, so Apache will still get read access, but it won't get write access. Now, I want this to apply recursively through the whole directory to all the files. And I'm going to change the user to FTP user. That's now the owner of the files. Apache remains the group. And I need to tell it the directory. So we go darkpixels.tech and hit enter. So now when I list that directory, you'll see here that that directory, darkpixel.tech, has FTP user is the owner of the file, so it'll be able to write to the files, and Apache is the group. And if I go inside that directory, you'll see the same thing on all the files. And there you go. So FTP users applied to the files inside the directory as well. The last thing we need to do is configure your FTP client. to use that private key that we created. In this example, I'm going to demonstrate this on Filezilla. Now, as I haven't configured this client before, I need to create a new site. I will be using SFTP, and I'll copy and paste the IP address of my instance. We can leave the port to the default, that's fine. Here I'm going to select logon type and use a key file. The user will be FTP user, that user I created. And now I go to key file and I select that private key that I created with PuttyGen. So here I'm going to go data/www and I want it to default to darkpixel.tech folder. And I'm going to connect. Now, the very first time you connect, you're going to be asked to confirm the key. So I'm going to say always trust this host. And here is my site. So when I click on site and we see all my folders in there, that has now successfully connected. So that's how you can set up a separate user with its own private keys. Makes it a little bit more secure for you, and it's really useful for if you've got someone else that's going to be working on those files for you.